There are gifts that announce themselves. They come wrapped, or they come with fanfare, or they come with the specific social machinery of giving that marks the moment as the kind of moment worth remembering: the bow, the presentation, the watching of the face of the person who receives. And then there are the other kind, the gifts that arrive in plain envelopes slipped through box office windows by people who are not there when the envelope is opened, who have arranged to be somewhere else by the time the thanks would come, who have given without any of the apparatus of giving that makes the giving visible. This is a story about the second kind. It begins with a 14-year-old boy named Marcus Webb standing outside the box office of the Wiltern Theatre in Los Angeles in October 1997. He had been standing there for approximately 20 minutes. He had counted his money twice. The result was the same both times. He did not have enough. The Wiltern was a Los Angeles institution, an Art Deco theater on Wilshire Boulevard that had been presenting concerts and performances for decades. On the night in question, it was presenting Robin Williams in a stand-up comedy performance, one of a limited run of shows that had sold out in less than 48 hours of going on sale. The tickets that remained available for purchase were at the box office returns, cancellations, the ordinary attrition of any event, and they were priced at full value, which was more than Marcus Webb had in his pocket. Marcus had saved for 3 weeks. He had his earnings from 2 months of washing cars in his neighbor's driveway on Saturday mornings, and he had the money his grandmother had given him for a school supply purchase he had not yet made, and he had the change from his lunch money that he had been accumulating since September. He had counted it at home before he left and had thought it might be enough. It was not. He needed 2 tickets. That was the point of the enterprise. One for himself was not the goal. His father, James Webb, was turning 47 in 3 days. James Webb had been a Robin Williams fan for as long as Marcus could remember, had owned the comedy albums before Marcus was born, had watched every film, had quoted lines from Good Morning Vietnam and Dead Poets Society in the specific way that people quote things that have become part of their internal language. He laughed differently at Robin Williams than he laughed at other things. Marcus had noticed this from a young age, without being able to name what he was noticing. What he was noticing was the specific quality of laughter that comes from recognition, the laughter of a person who is found in something made by someone else, a version of something they felt or thought or believed, rendered so precisely that the recognition produces the particular joy of not being alone in it. James Webb had a lot of that kind of laughter when Robin Williams was involved. Marcus had decided, sometime in September, that a Robin Williams show was the right thing for his father's 47th birthday. The divorce had been finalized 8 months earlier. James Webb was living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Culver City that he was making the best of in the way that a person makes the best of a 1-bedroom apartment when the alternative is for their 14-year-old son. To see them not making the best of it, he went to work. He called Marcus every day. He made dinner when Marcus came on weekends and did not let the apartment feel like what it was, the wreckage site of a life that was being rebuilt from scratch at 47. Marcus had noticed this too. He had decided that what his father needed for his 47th birthday was an evening of the specific kind of laughter that had characterized the best versions of James Webb that Marcus had been observing his whole life. 2 hours of Robin Williams, 2 tickets, father and son. He had not accounted for the price. He stood at the box office window for 20 minutes, hoping that another solution would present itself, or that he had miscounted, and the money in his pocket was somehow more than he had calculated. Neither thing happened. He was about to leave when a man appeared at the box office window beside him. The man was wearing ordinary clothes, a plain dark jacket, a simple shirt, dark jeans. He was heavy-set, with thick, dark, curly hair and a full beard. He was not dressed for an event. He was not accompanied by an entourage or a publicist or any of the visible machinery that attends the movements of famous people in public spaces. He looked at the box office window. He looked at Marcus. He said, "You trying to get in?" Marcus said, "I was trying to get tickets for my dad's birthday, but I'm a little short." The man said, How short? Marcus told him the amount. The man was quiet for a moment. He looked at the box office window again. Then, he looked at Marcus. He said, "Your dad a fan?" Marcus said, "Yes. Since before I was born." The man smiled. It was a specific kind of smile, not the performed smile of a famous person deploying warmth for a public occasion, but the private smile of someone who has just heard something that pleased them. He stepped up to the box office window. He had a brief exchange with the person inside that Marcus could not fully hear. He received something, an envelope. He turned back to Marcus. He held the envelope out. Marcus took it. He said, "For your dad, and for you." Marcus looked at the envelope. He started to say thank you, started to ask the man's name, started the social mechanics of receiving a gift from a stranger. When he looked up, the man was already walking away, back toward the theater entrance, moving with the specific, unhurried purpose of someone who has done what they came to do and is returning to the next thing. Marcus stood at the box office for a moment. Then he opened the envelope. Inside, 2 tickets for that evening's performance, and a small piece of paper, not a formal note, just a piece of paper with something written on it in a hand that Marcus did not recognize. It said, "For your dad, and for you." It was signed with 2 initials. Marcus looked at the initials for a moment. Then he looked at the theater entrance. Then he looked back at the initials. He understood. He stood at the box office for a long time after that, the envelope in his hands, the 2 tickets inside it, the small piece of paper with the 2 initials. The evening was beginning to arrive, the Los Angeles October dusk that comes at a specific low angle, the light off the Wiltern's Art Deco facade catching the gold of the ornamental work. He called his father from a payphone. He said, "Dad, are you busy tonight?" James Webb arrived at the Wiltern 40 minutes later. He was wearing the good jacket, the one he kept for occasions. He did not know yet what the occasion was. Marcus had not told him the specifics on the phone. He had said, "I got you something for your birthday. Come to the Wiltern tonight." James Webb saw his son standing in front of the Art Deco theater with an envelope in his hand and something in his expression that James had not seen in a while, the specific expression of a person who is about to do something good for someone they love and is already inside the goodness of it. Marcus held out the envelope. James opened it. He looked at the 2 tickets. He looked at Marcus. He said, "How did you get these?" Marcus said, "A man gave them to me." He had not told James about the initials on the note yet. He was holding that part. James said, "What man?" Marcus paused. Then he held out the small piece of paper. James Webb looked at the initials. He looked at them for a long time. His expression moved through several stages: the initial incomprehension, the dawning comprehension, the specific recalibration of a man who has just been told something he does not quite have a category for. He said, "Robin Williams gave you these tickets?" Marcus said, "I think so." James Webb said nothing for a moment. He looked at the theater. He looked at the 2 tickets. He looked at his son. Then he said, "Let's go in." The show that night, October 1997, Los Angeles. One of the run of shows Robin Williams did that autumn was, by James Webb's subsequent account, one of the best 2 hours of his life. He laughed in the way Marcus had always known him to laugh at Robin Williams, the deep recognition laughter, the laughter of a person finding their own interior life rendered externally and finding it funny and true simultaneously. He laughed so much that he cried twice, which was not something Marcus had seen his father do before, and which did not disturb him at all. He laughed the way people laugh, when something reaches them in exactly the right place, at exactly the right moment, when the specific human being doing the specific work is precisely calibrated to what the person watching most needs to receive. 47 years old, 8 months out of a marriage, making the best of a 1-bedroom apartment in Culver City. And Robin Williams was on a stage 30 feet away being Robin Williams, and James Webb was laughing in the dark. The gift had arrived. After the show, father and son walked out of the Wiltern into the Los Angeles October night. James had the program from the evening, Marcus had the small piece of paper with the initials. He still had it in his pocket. James said, "I want to know who gave you those tickets." Marcus handed him the small piece of paper. James looked at it again. He had looked at it before the show. He was looking at it now, after the show, and after the laughing, and after the crying, and after 2 hours of being in the specific presence of the person whose work had been part of his interior life since before Marcus was born. He said, "You didn't tell me before we went in." Marcus said, "I know." He said, "Why not?" Marcus thought about this. He said, "I wanted you to laugh first." James Webb looked at his son for a moment. Then he put his arm around Marcus's shoulders. They walked toward the parking structure in the Los Angeles night. He said, "That was the right call." They drove back to Culver City. James talked about the show for the entire drive, about the specific bits that had landed, about the lines he would be thinking about for weeks, about the specific kind of comedian Robin Williams was, the comedian who worked from the inside of the human experience rather than from the outside of it, who gave the audience not just laughter but the specific relief of recognition. Marcus listened. This was the version of his father he had been trying to give him for his 47th birthday. This version, talking, alive, present in his own life, laughing at things he found genuinely funny. The gift had worked. When James Webb dropped Marcus off at his mother's house, he held onto the hug for longer than the usual goodbye hug. Marcus felt his father's arm around his shoulder in the specific way of a person who is holding something that matters. He said, "Happy birthday, Dad." James said, "You're a good kid, Marcus." "How did you know?" Marcus thought about this. He said, "Because you always laughed differently at him." James Webb did not respond to this immediately. He sat in the car for a moment. Then he said, "Yeah, I did. I do." He drove away. Marcus stood on the sidewalk and watched his father's car until the taillights turned the corner. He still had the small piece of paper with the initials in his pocket. He has it still. Not in his pocket anymore. He is not 14 anymore. And the logistics of 30 years of adult life have relocated the piece of paper to a specific place in his home that is not a pocket, but accessible, the way he keeps things that matter. James Webb is 77 years old. He has seen Robin Williams perform several more times in the years since the October evening at the Wiltern. He has told the story of the birthday tickets many times to colleagues, to his own parents before they died, to the new people who have entered his life in the years since the one-bedroom apartment in Culver City. He tells it with the specific quality of someone describing a piece of their own history that they are still grateful for. He tells the box office part. He tells the envelope part. He tells Marcus's phone call. He tells the show. He always tells the show with the specific emotional recollection of someone describing 2 hours that were exactly what they needed to be at exactly the right time. He tells the piece of paper with the initials. And he always tells the thing Marcus said when James asked how he knew. The answer that James has been thinking about for 30 years, because it is both the simplest and the most precise thing anyone has ever said to him about why he loved Robin Williams's comedy. Because you always laughed differently at him. James Webb laughed differently at Robin Williams, because Robin Williams made him feel, in the specific way that the best comedy makes people feel, that the interior landscape of being a human being, its absurdity, and its longing, and its grief, and its joy, and the specific comedy of the distance between who we are and who we intended to be was something shared rather than private. That the darkness was funnier than it seemed from inside it. That laughter was not the denial of pain but the acknowledgement of it at the specific angle from which it became survivable. That is what Robin Williams gave to James Webb across 3 decades of albums and films and one October evening at the Wiltern Theatre. And the gateway to that evening was a 14-year-old boy standing at a box office window, a little short, counting money that didn't add up, and a man in a plain dark jacket who asked, "How short?" and who did not wait to be thanked, who left before the thanks could come, who gave the gift the right way, completely, without residue, without the apparatus of being seen giving, an envelope at a box office window, 2 tickets, a small piece of paper, for your dad, and for you. There is a particular quality to the gifts that arrive without announcement from people who leave before the thanks can happen. They occupy a different category from the gifts that are presented and witnessed and responded to in real time. They exist entirely in their effects, rather than in any transaction between giver and receiver. They cannot be returned. They cannot be declined. They arrive completed, and the completion is part of the gift. Marcus Webb has thought about this for 30 years. He was 14 when it happened. He is now in his mid-40s. He has his own children, and he has told them the story of the October evening at the Wiltern, not as a celebrity story, not as a famous person story, but as a story about what giving can look like when the giving is done without the apparatus of being known as someone who gives. He describes Robin Williams in that story the way he would describe anyone who had been kind to him in a moment when kindness was what was needed, as a person. A heavy-set man in a plain dark jacket who asked how short and listened to the answer and then stepped up to the window and handled the situation and held the envelope out and said, "For your dad and for you," and was already walking away. Before the thanks could form, he describes the initials on the note the way he would describe any detail that matters in a story, as a fact. The initials were there. He understood what they meant when he looked at them. He did not understand immediately, and then he did. And what he understood was both simple and enormous simultaneously. He describes his father's face when James opened the envelope and saw the tickets. He describes the jacket James had put on, the good jacket, kept for occasions. He describes his father's specific laughter during the show, the recognition laughter, the laughter of a man finding his interior life rendered externally. He describes the drive back to Culver City, his father talking about the show for the entire drive, alive, present. The version Marcus had been trying to give him. And he describes the thing he said, and the thing his father said back, and the long hug on the sidewalk outside his mother's house, and the taillights going around the corner. He still has the piece of paper. It is in its specific place in his home. He knows where it is, without going to look. On the occasions when he wants to hold it, he can go directly to it. For your dad. And for you. James Webb has the same piece of paper in his memory. Marcus held it, but James carries it. He carries it in the way that people carry the specific details of evenings that were exactly what they needed to be, at exactly the right time, not with effort, not as a deliberate act of remembering, but as part of the inventory of things that have shaped who he is. He is 77. He has had many good evenings in 77 years. He has had many evenings of laughter and connection, and the specific joy of being in a room where someone is doing something that reaches you. But the October evening at the Wiltern, with his son beside him, and his 47th birthday 3 days away, and the one-bedroom apartment in Culver City waiting, and Robin Williams on a stage 30 feet away that evening, has a specific quality that the other good evenings do not have. It was given to him, not earned, not purchased, not the result of his own effort or planning. Given by his 14-year-old son, who had counted his money and found it short, and stood at the box office window for 20 minutes, hoping for a solution. And the solution arrived in the form of a heavy-set man in a plain, dark jacket who stepped up to the window and asked how short and handled it and left before the thanks could happen. He tells people, "I don't know if Robin Williams knew who my son was when he gave those tickets. I don't know if he understood the specific situation Marcus was in. I only know what Marcus told me, that he explained about his dad's birthday, that the man listened, that the man helped, and that by the time Marcus looked up to say thank you, the man was already walking away." He pauses when he tells this, and then he says, "That's the part that stays with me. He didn't stay. He gave the thing, and he left. He wasn't there for the thank you. He didn't need the thank you. He just gave it, and walked away. And that's how you know it was real." James Webb has been thinking about that for 30 years. He still thinks Robin Williams was right. That's how you know it was real. You give it, and you walk away, And the thing you gave goes off and becomes what it becomes. The 2 tickets, the evening, the laughter, the recognition, the hug on the sidewalk, the taillights turning the corner, the piece of paper in Marcus's pocket, the conversation in the car on the drive back to Culver City. Because you always laughed differently at him. That is the fullness of what was given at a box office window in Los Angeles in October 1997. A plain dark jacket, an envelope, 2 initials, for your dad and for you. Marcus Webb has been thinking about that for 30 years. He still has the piece of paper in its specific place at home. He knows where it is without going to look. On the occasions when he wants to hold it, he can go directly to it. For your dad and for you. Robin Williams died in August 2014. Marcus called his father. They talked about the Wiltern for a while, about the specific kind of comedian Robin Williams had been and what it felt like to lose him. James said the thing he always said about the night. That is how you know it was real. He gave it, and he walked away. Marcus found the note that evening. It was where he keeps things that matter. He held it for a while. The small piece of paper, 30 years old. 2 initials. For your dad and for you. He put it back in its place. It is still there.